Good morning, Sam.
Hey, Josh. Where's baby today?
Growing up and acting like a person. Yeah, my partner is doing Chinese medicine, so on Saturday she has to go to a clinic. So I've been tasked to take care of her. Not every Saturday, but yesterday was tough.
Hmm.
Yeah. Hello, Barry.
Howdy,
Barrister.
it's me. Let's see, I think I'll change my background. I don't want to be in outer space today. Where shall I be? In the weeds or maybe in the aurora? Is that better?
You should get one of your pictures from your speaking group, whichever I forget the name of it.
Toastmasters?
Yeah, you should get a Toastmasters room shot so that you can actually show us that you're in Toastmasters.
Technically, I'm not in it. I'm just
I know. Physically, you're in it.
physically, I'm there to help make the technology work. Because people know how to talk this way, but not talk this way.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking on backgrounds, I've been when you videotape someone, if you do close in on the desk and just their face, generate an AI to go out and create a background that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
It's a really fun little trick. Like I'm on space and Mars if I took this background and expanded it out.
Yep. All right. Hey, Sam.
Morning.
Did you get my upload from yesterday? It's kind of late when I sent it out.
Again, I crashed, so I haven't seen it yet, but thank you. I'll go try and stitch it together. Actually, I posted the two segments that I have, but I'll probably use yours because you have more of it than I do.
Yeah, mine starts about 15 minutes after the hour. The thing is that I didn't have time to send it to you until quite late last night.
No problem, Barry. You know, sometimes I don't even get to it for days or sometimes weeks. So, what's on people's minds? Any check-ins?
Hmm.
My favorite tool I just got. It's a
So is that a
little
lot?
tool for miter saws, so you can cut angles in wood,
Oh,
and you can go from the inside or the outside of the corners. So I've been waiting for this to arrive. It just came in the mail.
cool.
That's fun.
Well, speaking of things that just arrived, I got a little DAC. I don't know if you guys use these things, but it's a digital analog converter
Oh,
for streaming music. And
Oh,
sorry, was someone
just going through analog to digital. You're talking about old records or 8 tracks or cassette or what?
no. This is not converting analog to digital. This is digital to analog, which actually takes digital media and converts it at high speed and high fidelity. And it actually feeds an analog signal into your stereo system. And I was actually shocked that I could tell the difference.
you could tell the difference.
Quite good. Yeah.
Is that hallucination or real? Can you measure with instrument?
No, I actually listened to an AB, listen to oboes, listen to violins, listen to voices, whatever. And it's actually noticeable that when you actually use, let's say, Spotify or even a higher quality source like Tidal, and you just listen for how full and how detailed and how well placed the audio signals are, like the singers, the drums, the violins. It's actually
By definition, if I can remind you, by definition, digital means it got chopped off at the at the sampling rate. How
I
do you
understand.
go beyond the sampling rate?
They actually interpolate.
Well, you also
Yeah,
have
that's what I'm saying.
you also have the sampling quantization error. That is, you have to quantize it so you don't get the in-betweens. Is that what
Yeah.
you're detecting? The quantization is the teensy jump in amplitude? That's supposed to be pretty imperceptible if you have a high enough bit rate.
What happens is some of these cheap devices that I've been using, like just regular phones, or even see, I had a Motorola One, and I also had some old Samsungs, like 6s and 8s. And if you use those audio sources, they sound good. But if you actually use a DAC, it sounds a little bit better. Okay, now I will then unplug it and plug it back in, and unplug it and plug it back in, and actually just do the aux1, aux2 business. And it could be hallucination, but I am actually thinking I can hear the placement of these devices much more finely than I could hear before.
It's not your hallucination I'm referring to. It's the digital to analog, the algorithm that extrapolate.
I know you're
That's a
saying that there's
hallucination.
only a certain amount of information in the signal, and you cannot actually get more
Yeah.
information out of it. Yes, I understand that. Yeah.
You can smooth out the.
Again, this is
But see,
also
here's the
machine
source.
learning.
Here's the thing. If you're listening to a CD, yes, it's a little bit to like 40 or 44 kHz, okay? But if you're listening to sources like Spotify and Tidal, they have much higher bitrate sources, much higher, like all the way up to 384K. So those I do listen to.
So you have almost no quantization noise that you can detect at that
Obviously, it's an asymptotic, approach, to high fidelity. But 44 versus 384. There have been studies done, and some people claim, yeah, you can't tell the difference beyond 44 or 88. But I haven't actually done all the different points in between. I've actually just done those two, and I'm enjoying the device right now. So, in fact, last night I was up till like 2 o'clock in the morning just listening to music.
What kind of speakers?
Infinity Kappa 9s.
Nice.
Since about the early 80s, I had actually 87 or 88. I had a set of Infinity Kappa 8s, which just blew my mind. I just love those speakers so much. But when lately, due to the recent promotion, I was now able to afford a nicely refurbished, set of Kappa 9s. So it's only in Vancouver. It's only about 2.5 hours away. So I drove up to get them last August, or I think it was sometime last August. And I am just really enjoying music now. It's about the only thing I do. I don't watch Netflix. I don't watch very many TV shows. I do watch a lot of YouTube, however. That's a different thing. But listening to music is the way I sort of just unplug after the day.
Does the name David Hafner, I think it's Hafner, ring a bell with you in terms of audio, sort of analog audio gear?
Not directly.
Oh, I was over at a friend of mine's house to help him get his Wi-Fi back in operation. He's quite the musicologist, and he retired 3 items he gave me. One was a cassette player, which is no big deal because nobody plays cassettes anymore. But then he had a preamp and an amplifier that was analog. And I think the brand name was something like David Hafner. And it's like a 600-watt amplifier that takes RCA inputs and generates outputs to drive, big ass speakers that, can run at hundreds of watts of audio power.
Watts at what resistance? If it's at 8 ohms or 4 ohms or 2 ohms, it makes a huge difference.
I actually don't know because I just took them out of the car and looked at the label, and I thought, what the hell am I going to do with these? I mean, these drive, really loud loudspeakers, way back in the day when everything was analog, RCA connectors, and and cassette tape and that kind of
Hey,
stuff.
RCA connectors are still used.
Yeah.
They
And
still-
one was a mixer. So you have your tuner input and your photo input and your aux input, and you could switch and mix and whatever and get a. So he had a mixer or a switcher, I guess it is, and then this, and then the stereo amplifier. I thought, all right, what am I going to do with these?
If you have no use for it, I'll come visit you and I'll listen to it. I'll check it out.
Well, I could certainly show them to you, and you can see what they are and decide if you have any interest in them.
Yeah, send me the model number and I'll look at the total harmonic distortion and other specs, and you probably
I'll
have
to,
a nice piece of equipment on your hands.
Yeah. Also, I need to do from yesterday is I had promised to send Heiner some information, which I haven't sent him yet. I got to make a note to do all that stuff. What happened was yesterday, an elderly friend of mine who used to work at BBN, his internet connection stopped working and he had no clue. He's like 92 years old now. So I went to his house and I got his internet working, but I'm only like 1/3 really finished with the whole setup. And I didn't get home until 11. I was there for, I don't know, from about 1:30 to about 11 p.m. So, and I still got to go back this afternoon and continue working on it.
It's a lot of voluntary work.
I had to do a lot of reverse engineering because, first of all, I wasn't familiar with the gear that he had to begin with. And I wasn't familiar with the configuration that had been set up to use. And he had no recollection, even though he and his son probably set it up 6 years ago. He has no recollection of how it was set up. I had to reverse engineer the gear and then had reverse engineer how he configured it. And I only got about halfway through that exercise.
Most of the internet Wi-Fi setup are pretty constrained by the hardware. So if I were you, I'll just ignore whatever configuration it has, focus on, what's the hardware they have, and then go from there and just erase everything, because it's much easier to stop troubleshooting. If you try to troubleshoot, it's like trying to fix a house. I'd rather bulldoze the house now and build it from scratch, from factory.
The thing was, I couldn't even determine which of 3 devices was the Wi-Fi base station.
Yeah.
And I think I finally figured out why the one that I thought was the Wi-Fi base station wasn't being used as the base station, and he had 2 other Cisco Linksys devices downstream. And I spent most of the time trying to figure out how to get into the administrative interface of the first one, only to finally conclude that that's not the one he was using as the base station. He had
a lot of people do this. A lot of people doing this incompetently, shall I say? They just lucky guess and get it to work just that one time or whatever. So that's what the problem is.
So he has RCN, which comes in on cable. So he had a device called ARRIS, ARRIS, which receives the RCN cable signal and then produces an Ethernet signal for the Wi-Fi and also a base station. But it had a feature called Mocha. And I don't know if I even heard of Mocha, because he had a Roku device on his television. I'm going, how is the TV getting a signal? Because there's no Wi-Fi where the TV is. And it turns out this ARRIS thing takes in the RCA signal, extracts the media, sends the media back out on the same coax. That's what it's like, media on coax something. And then the Roku gets this locally extracted subchannel of the media to feed the TV. And I go, how the devil is he getting a TV signal if he has no internet? And it turns out it's something called Mocha, which I never heard of. And in the meantime, I was trying to get the Wi-Fi working. And that was on another little Cisco Linksys device that had no antennas on it. I go, how can this be a Wi-Fi? It's got no antennas. It's this big and it's skinny. But it turned out it had 2.4 and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi in it. And now I got to figure out how to get into that and make it configure so everything talks to everything else in a hierarchical subordinate manner. because he couldn't get a strong enough Wi-Fi signal in his living room to run his cell phone. I go, wait a second, this is only 30 feet away. How come you can't get, how come your Wi-Fi signal strength is 1 bar 30 feet away from your base station with nothing in between? So I'm still trying to figure out how to get him a Wi-Fi extender that gives him a decent signal in his living room, which is, 20 steps from the den where the other devices are.
Yeah, listen to what you just told me, Barry. I would recommend replacing a lot of the old equipment because it's insecure now. So because the security of the 6 years has been greatly improved,
Yeah.
I would not recommend to keep using the old 6 years old machine, router or whatever.
He had the Wi-Fi extender with no password at all.
Yeah, I know.
And then the other one he had a password on, but he didn't remember the password because his iPhone was remembering the password. I said, what's your Wi-Fi password? He says, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's very typical. It's very typical. So I would recommend to get a new set of mesh, Wi-Fi, whatever. It's very inexpensive,
Well, the one he had, the Cisco
I recommend that.
We're retailing at $400 when I looked them up, and I go, that can't be $400. That's nuts.
Again, it could be expensive, but old technology has a lot of hole in it. That's the thing. Anyway, Aries is to be the AT&T fiber optics, fiber Ethernet, and they should have the Wi-Fi built in.
It does have Wi-Fi built in. Here's the funny thing. So I finally get into the administrative on the Aris. I find out that they always have a login as admin. This one, the password is literally password. So I had to look that up and into it. And then I checked to see I looked at the logs because these things have logs on them. And about every month, it tries to download a software firmware upgrade for the Aris box. And the initial config is how it knows where to look.
Right.
So the initial config is dated 2017. And I can't look into it. I only know that it's a 2017 edition of the software. And then I look in the log, and it tries to go to some presumably then relevant website to download to see if there's an update. And there's a whole cycle of partial download, corrupted download, failed too many tries, and it was like doing this every month. It was failing it hadn't downloaded a firmware software update in 6 years, and I thought, is that why this unit went into some non-functioning mode? The answer is no. I don't think that was the culprit. I think it was the Cisco Linksys that was the culprit. And now I got to go back and figure out how to get into that guy and see if it's working.
Yeah.
But he was getting a very, very weak Wi-Fi signal, basically 30, 40 feet away from where it was positioned.
Yeah, sure. I think go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, I had something to say before, but after listening to Barry's story, I was going to say the Google Wi-Fi hockey puck that should do everything that you need. I think it's as cheap as $50 now, like the older version.
I'll have to look it up. I have all these old Linksys boxes laying around from back in the 2.4 gigahertz era. And some of them are pretty basic. And other models, you can hack in different firmware from an outfit called DD-WRT. You can download new firmware that will let you do all kinds of things that the original boxes didn't do. For example, if you want a Wi-Fi extender, the classical way to do a Wi-Fi extender is you have to have an Ethernet to feed it, and then you can have another base station somewhere else. But you can also have one that listens to the existing Wi-Fi over the air and then repeats it without having to have an Ethernet. And it turns out that with this thing called DD-WRT, you can hack the firmware of some of these old Linksys models to turn them into a wireless Wi-Fi repeater.
Right.
And turns out I have one that's eligible. I had previously set it up as a Ethernet fed Wi-Fi extender, but now I can theoretically hack it to do a wireless Wi-Fi extender.
So you want to do your own mesh, basically, right?
Essentially, and see, the problem is that he doesn't have Ethernet fed hardly anywhere in the house, and the reason is that
so
the Roku turns out.
What I recommend you to do is this. Okay, listen. The hardware you might get working, but it has zero software security firewall built into that. The new firewall router built in, it will scan your internal device to see if there's any hole, security hole, as well as protect you from going to the wrong URL, meaning, virus and malware and all that stuff. So those are really important. There's no protection.
Doesn't the iPhone already do that for you?
No, basically Roku's and all that. There's any devices. He may be using laptop with whatever. He has zero protection right now.
He doesn't have a laptop. He has a fairly modern HP desktop.
It's
only
Sam's talking about the actual gateway itself, the router gateway.
Actual gateway itself.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. The actual gateway comes in from RCN.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is Barry says the modern routers/gateways will have security filters and rules.
Yeah, firewall and everything. Yeah.
They'll have BGP.
So
they'll have white IP listing, etc.
So maybe a hacker is coming into his IP address and hacking his router, and maybe that's why it failed.
Yep.
Well,
possible.
It's possible.
All I'm saying is your front door has no lock. Your front door have no policeman guiding for you. Your front door has nothing to check where's poisonous air coming into your house. I'm just telling you, you got zero protection right now. That's
one possible reason why the internet stopped working. That somebody hacked his external IP address and somehow.
Yes, possible. Everything is possible, and they have no repercussions. Anybody that hacked into it, if it find something, you can catch them. They have no repercussion to them. They do it all day long. And
well, if he has
so
to,
that's a dangerous
Josh
place.
still has his hand up, by the way.
Yeah, if we put a 90-year-old man in the house with no locks and no security guard, no inspection going on into the.
I once walked into his house where he left his front door unlocked, but they weren't home. Yeah, and I set off the alarm, and it turned out that they were 30 miles away at their son's house. And I was invited, I think it was Thanksgiving or some event. And I was invited to join them. I thought it was at their house. It turned out it was at their son's house. So I go to the grandparents' house, and I open the front door. And I set off the freaking alarm. There's nobody home.
That's right.
They're halfway across the state at the son's house instead.
This is why I repeat. This is why I repeatedly say the way you do one thing is the way you do everything else. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, anyway, just out of curiosity, did you guys all use the password or the special link today, or is the old?
I use Duck Farm. I use Duck Farm and the regular ID. Do you have a different ID?
No, it's the same one, but I thought that no longer worked without the password. I was just wondering whether anybody got in without the password.
No, it gave me the prompt.
I got in without password. No password for me. I just get I don't have a password part because it drives me crazy to read them and type.
Exactly. Oh, you use the URL that has an encrypted password.
Yeah, I use the URLs with the password built in. Yeah.
No, if I use a remembered basic ID in Zoom, remembers your recent ID numbers, then you have to put the password in by hand.
Anyway, looks like Dig DJ was here, so I was wondering if he got the new link or whether somebody gave him the password or whether the old one still works. I was just curious.
Joshua sent him the link.
Yeah, Joshua sent me this link, I think, 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have sent the encrypted, Sam. I believe that's what I sent. I sent both with the password.
It's okay. I was just
once you're in it. Once you're in, it doesn't matter, because if you go up and click the little green shield in the upper left, it discloses the password and everything for you. It gives you all that same information.
Yeah. Anyway,
So it's not really secret once you're
my
in.
question's been answered. Sorry. Josh has had his hand up.
It was up because I just saw an article about the European Union passing a law that makes it so that cell phones, laptops, electric vehicles have to have the right to repair, but also the right to replace. So it's a law to state you have to take a battery in and out of your cell phone or your laptop, which I thought was pretty interesting because it sort of throws a wrench into a lot of money being made by manufacturers,
Right.
and also just changes the mindset of, hey, we should be able to get in and out of this. And they cited IPv6 and IPv8 and different dust proof and waterproof, but they had batteries that came in and out of Samsungs with high IP ratings. I was just curious what you guys think about the idea of moving forward, the ability to, I put this to you, Barry, because you're such a tinkerer, like the
Yeah.
ability to be able to go into these pieces of equipment and tinker with them and
Yeah,
fix them and
there
use
were
them.
some models. People give me their old cell phones that are really obsolescent. Some of them you could just take the battery in and out. It's no big deal. I had a Droid 2 that one of my neighbors gave me, and I was using it just on Wi-Fi, and eventually it started swelling up, which is the battery dying. And so I looked it up, and you could buy a replacement battery for about $20, and you need a little special tool, tiny little Torx or something. But to take it apart, the whole thing is glued together. So you gotta, peel off, the part and open it up and where it's all glued. And I did that. It was like a half-day job. But I followed the instructions. It's got like 27 tiny little screws around the perimeter. And I follow the instructions, like you're doing the recipe out of a fancy cookbook. And I successfully replaced the battery with one that I bought off of eBay. But boy, I can't imagine very many people ever wanting to do that. And I can't imagine taking a device like that to a professional, because even if they can do it in an hour, they're going to have to charge you like $100 or something or more. I mean, these guys probably make $100 an hour at least.
So that line of thinking is in the video I was watching, they gave an example of a small wire that fuses the monitor itself, the screen, and it's a 50-cent little piece, but they wrap it inside a foil that doesn't let you change that out. And the idea that you're going to spend 2 hours of a repair person's time, which is usually $75 an hour, $150 on a piece that costs less than 50 cents.
Yeah.
That sort of concept, I think, is a metaphor for what's going on in society with the whole world. Is we're wrapping things up in a way, whether it be a conversation, whether it be an iPhone, whether it be a car, it's proprietary to the people that make it, to have sort of a monopoly. And it's sort of a new way around the old monopoly laws from the early 1900s.
They're basically not repairable by anybody but a hacker. And a hacker has to do it as a hobby, because you're not going to do it to earn a living. No way. Because you're going to, it's like, well, yesterday I spent, 10 hours at my friend's house just trying to figure out why his internet had gone out on him and how to get it back working again. And if he'd called up RCN, it's Saturday, right? If he calls up RCN, he's probably going to get an intern on the phone who doesn't know diddly squat. And then, and I said, he said, should we call up RCN? I said, look, if we get a bureaucrat, I have to talk kindergarten language to them, and basically says, it doesn't work, can you fix it? If I get a technician, I can explain exactly what I've discovered in technical language, but very unlikely I can get one on the phone on a Saturday afternoon. And I said to my friend, I said, before we call anybody up, because you're not going to get anywhere very far, very fast, I said, let me reverse engineer it and do the research and figure out what the story is, so that if and when you need to call them up, you can say something that they can understand and respond to. Most of the time you call them up, they have no idea how to map what the customer says into anything that makes sense, technologically. Go ahead, Sam.
So I'm going to pop up a level and try and see if I can give you my spin on this, okay? So the notion that I'm thinking about right now as we speak is Earth-centered versus human-centered. So if you take a look at our economic system, it is almost by definition a human-centered system because the fundamental motive at work in economy today is my profit, my
Exactly.
well-being,
Exactly.
my income. Okay.
Exactly.
Now, if you take a look at these devices, let's just even look at Apple devices. Okay. Apple, through Steve Jobs, has been very human-centric. It's how is it easy for me to use? How is it easy for me to just do what I need to do? Okay. So they, hard solder, certain hardware devices to the motherboard, and they make certain things unreplaceable, even by technicians. Okay. And so they've actually succeeded magnificently, if you go by capitalist terms, in making these devices that are very easy to use, very easy to consume, but not very replaceable, not very fixable, not very maintainable.
Exactly.
Now, if you take a look at what a Earth-centric design would be, it would be, let's say, hey, I can plug up my memory modules and I can put in different memory modules, and I can take my old ones and give them to somebody else. Or I could take my disk drive and do the same thing, or I could take my display and do the same thing. So, if you take a look at the early architectures of PCs, like S100 or even the PC bus, with, what do they call them, PCI or something like that, they're replaceable components. Now, does this mean it's harder to use? Slightly. Some people will say, yeah, that's a big enough obstacle, I can't use it. Okay, that's why Apple makes trillions, well, billions at least. Okay, so there needs to be a shift between an Earth-centric mode, which says, hey, I got to worry about the forest, I got to worry about the electricity production, I got to worry about warmth, I got to worry about water, I got to worry about air, I got to worry about people, I got to worry about transportation, just how all of those things flow. But anytime you build systems based on single objectives like profit or ease of use, all the other abilities, if they're not top of mind and first class in your design thinking, they're going to go by the wayside. So if we have a system that very well functions as a capitalist society, everything else falls by the wayside. If you focus solely on ease of use, other things fall by the wayside. That's why I think systemic thinking cannot be so simple-minded. Simple-minded thinking says, I'm going to work towards this. Okay, and that's the be-all and end-all, whether it's capitalism, whether it's profit, whether it's health, whether it's, whatever, okay? And systems thinking says you got to worry about a whole multiple panoply of objectives. So if you're not thinking at the same time around health, around Earth, around other species, around, sufficiency and cap limits to certain growth, you're not systems thinking. And without a lack of systems thinking, any single one of these, I don't care which one it is going to create massive, massive, quote unquote, unintended consequences. But these are intentionally unintended because you didn't care about them. So that's why I think that's a nice way for me, at least, in my own mind, to wrap it around what we're here for on Sundays, which is to really think more critically, really think more rationally, really think more systemically, really think more model-based, really think more, interplay between a lot of different complex phenomena. And that's hard, but somebody's got to do it. And without proper examples of success, it's too much to expect our politicians to even understand this, let alone do it.
Exactly.
And that's what I think, we're trying to do in limited places. I'm not saying this is the only place, OGM might be another one. There's other places doing it, but they're very few and far between. And we don't get enough exposure to lessons learned and examples of successes and examples of how to do this. And that's what I think we could try and focus on. But that's just one thought. Sorry for the long rant. Over.
Yeah, this is the issue that I run into as a hacker trying to keep antique systems running. For example, here I am. I'm on a 2013 iMac, so it's 10 years old. This iMac, which is running beautifully, topped out at Catalina. It came, I think, with I forget what it came with, but it came with whatever operating system was current in 2013. It topped out natively at Catalina, which meant that the browsers wouldn't update, and you start to get complaints that you don't have enough security anymore. Okay, now I put Open Core Legacy Patcher on this machine, which allows me to update it all the way to Ventura. And all that Open Core Legacy Patcher does is it provides you with the drivers that Apple took out of the more recent versions of the operating system. So Open Core just puts them back in again, and this is running just fine on Ventura. It'll probably run fine on Sonoma when that's available. And I keep machines that are 10, 20 years old running with late model software, but I can't imagine more than a tiny percentage of people who are willing to learn the hacking because it's so freaking arcane that the average person is never going to bother to learn to do it. And if you try to get somebody to do it for you for money, it's not worth it. So they end up throwing away devices that are more than 6 years old. Sam?
I understand that that's a way of coping with the fact that we have designed with single objective, and therefore the fallout is these devices that are almost intentionally obsoleted, as you mentioned, by Apple, right? So now you got to like spend your time learning how to fix the intentional obsolescence that Apple basically just mandated that you suffered from.
Right.
What I'm more interested in is the upfront side of things, not the consequences of that, but how can we actually start thinking differently so that we're not just thinking, oh, well, I'm going to intentionally obsolete this in 6 years or 10 years. Let me make it so that, other devices can replace it easily, or other components can be replaced easily. And I might be wrong, but I think Sweden is one of the leading countries that say they're going to recycle everything or they're going to mandate that everything be fixable. And I think that thinking, is probably somewhere in this example of how we shift from single objective, human-centered thinking to more earth-centered thinking and earth-centered design. I'm personally myself more interested in how do we make that shift. That is necessary if we're going to level up as a species. If we don't do that, we do not stand a chance of leveling up as a species, in my opinion.
You have to standardize. If you want things to be fixable, you can't have 17 different proprietary versions. Each one you have to have knowledge. You've got to have, like the North American Telephone Network.
Maybe, but I don't accept that as just an assumption.
Say that again?
I don't accept that as an assumption. It may be a consequence, but I don't see it as an obvious assumption.
Well, this is the problem I run into. Every time somebody brings in a product, I've got to look up that model and find out the idiosyncrasies of that model to disassemble it and to find the parts and repair it. Even though in the abstract, they're the same basic function, the implementations are so arcane and distinct that I've got to research every single example. Every year and model is different in terms of taking it apart, getting the parts and replacing it. And as a result, you can't, it's economically not practical. If they were all standardized, like the basic Western Electric telephone, it was so standardized that you knew exactly. Pick up a telephone, it's a Western Electric Model 500, and for 30 years that was it. And they're all basically the same. Now you got all these different models and no two alike, and everyone's got arcane technical distinctions to learn. Joshua has his hand up.
I would like to go around the room and hear from Sam and Dig VJ, and this is a great topic. So before I speak, I would like to hear from other people.
been doing a lot of speaking already. I have something in mind, but I'll let others go first.
I look at this, and I've been involved in many products in Silicon Valley, and billions of dollars go through my sales channel and all that stuff. So I would say there's only one factor. Is you may not believe it, you may not want to admit it, you may not want to accept it, but we live in a survival mode society, especially on startup, especially on development. Even Apple is in the survival mode. Believe it or not, Google is in survival mode. So they have to, they want to call the word creating value. So which means that I give you $5,000 worth of something, I only cost me $500 to make it, or whatever that is. Like iPhone, if you look at the cost of they need to accommodate well, unless they do that, they cannot survive in this dog world, or whatever you want to call that. So if you can take away their survival mode operating, now the next problem is going to be like military. Military had unlimited budget from the government, okay? Guess what they do? Because they are now in abandoned mode, they go to another extreme. So it used to be, if I remember correctly, in the AMD days, they waited 5 years for the semiconductor product to mature before they start using their product, because now they're stabilized and reliable and all that stuff. But guess what? They cannot afford to wait that anymore because of what? So any product you want to militarize it, which means that you do it exactly reliable, stress tests, humidity test, pressure test, temperature test, you name it, all the 38510 military standard they have to go through, okay? The trouble is that it costs too much. It's like a camera will cost $2,700 like 30 years ago. God knows what it costs right now, So one extreme of survival mode on the private sector to militarize, a Pentagon budget with no limit at all, to a different extreme. So I would say that if I go back to what Barry was talking about, we like stages. The society need to learn. Okay, I need to learn. I'm not wasting things, but you can only not wasting things if your stomach is full. If your stomach is not full, how do you not wasting anything? So in their survival mode, believe me, it's like the battery thing. It's a lot cheaper for me to build a product that battery cannot be replaced by a grandma. It can be replaced by a technician, but it cannot be replaced by grandma. Guess what? Because it saved me cost, it saved me trouble, it saved me trouble. Can you imagine the grandma trying to replace the battery and something goes wrong? They call tech support. I got a new iPhone, the battery, I just put it backward, it blew out the chips, so send me a new one, defective. Again, I can go on and on and on and about all this. It's all about cost, it's all about survival, it's all about optimizing. You think of it profit as profit. I don't think of profit as profit. I call that reserve. That's why you have a fridge in the house to keep you for hunger. So that's my say. Thank you.
DVJ, you want to go? Otherwise, I have.
Yeah, of course. I would like to add on that what Sam Chan said. And here are two things that I would like to convey on this thing, that sometimes we wish something to be true and they are not. I think we stuck into that wishful thinking loop sometimes that we do. And of course we are in survival mode because we have designed the societies in a way that we have to compete to let the best idea win. And the main focus over the centuries, like last 200 years, has been that we all have a leveling playing field, all right, so that we can compete fairly. So sometimes these models, I think everything is just a model for now. If we come up with a better model to govern the society, we will be getting different sort of results. And this is what we have to deal with. And I don't have any technical background on it, as Sam and Barry have, but I really resonated with the thought that yes, this competitive society has to survive. These companies who are very competitive in nature has to survive, and it's all there just to optimize our functions, to optimize our time better, and we pay for that. And if these companies are able to solve those problems and their solutions are not challenged, then they turn that solutions into the high profit businesses. So I think the fundamental nature of our approach towards governing the society has been in a way that we incentivize solutions, and we are trying to give a fair leveling field to people. I think that's what it is.
The reason we pay so much for an iPhone is because putting the whole infrastructure together so everything all work together is very, very hard.
Yeah.
How many other companies have attempted it? Even Google can't even get it right? So
Exactly.
think of we talk about high fidelity audio system. Do you know that not only the amps, your power supply had to be super clean. The wire had to be, make sure there's no interference. You don't put your speaker wire over your power line, power cord to the power supply. You got to make sure that all the interference are taken away. Anything in between the source of the sound to the speaker that go to your ear had to be all fine-tuned, perfectly matched, everything and with all that. So it's super complicated. So the reason they have a high profit is simply because they earn it, is what I'm thinking, from my perspective. Because they deserve it. I don't mind because if I pay $1,500 on iPhone because that's what I need for what it is, because nobody else have ever come up with it. But if there are 10 other people did it, I don't pay $1,500 on iPhone.
Exactly. I think it's the value that they add is much more important. And
they call it profit, they earn it. It's not about the profit because they are greedy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's how things are, because they offer something really exclusive, and not many companies can do that. I totally understand that they have ample resources to do that, but they have come the hard way up as well. They had some, unfair advantages as well, but they have built those advantages over the time, and the philosophies of these companies really define our lifestyle at some point, and that's what fascinates me and troubles me at most time as well, because what they decide to to have a go, those things are going to have a lot of impact on my life. Those minute decisions are going to be the I would say the power code to my feelings, thoughts, and my functions.
I mean, to keep things simple, or think of just food. You can go to McDonald's and get a 99-cent hamburger, or you can go to a $35, hamburger in a restaurant.
Yeah, that's it.
You don't have to. You can have 35 hamburger from the 99-cent place. Enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. So this idea of what Sam was talking about, this earth-centric versus human-centric design and visions, and I think it's this group which have intrigued this thought of systematic thinking in me, and now I really think deep into these concepts. But I think it's all the time it's the trade-off that we have evolved in such and such manner, so we just cannot shred off all those qualities that we have had and what has helped us survive, and we just cannot help it when it interferes with the sometimes logical or sometimes wishful solutions that we offer. So it's always going to be a tussle between those two, our instincts, which have been proven themselves over the years, but another point which is also valid, that the evolution doesn't happen in the same way always, because it happens in all the directions, and the best solution, which is adaptive, that wins it. And we may be onto the cusp of finding it out, that whether this earth-centric or society-centric decisions are going to succeed. So it depends a lot on the philosophies that we're going to carry on, and these companies have a lot of power in that. Like, I just can't even imagine that they are that epigenetic cusp of technology that is going to define how I feel or how I do things or how the society functions.
Anybody else want to go before I do?
Has anybody besides me seen that video, a World War II era Jeep, classic Jeep, where a team of like 5 or 6 people completely tear down a Jeep to all the elementary parts in about 10 minutes and then reassemble it and drive it away?
Yep.
That's a machine that was designed to be a standardized model that was going to be in service for 25 years, and non-technical people can completely disassemble it and completely reassemble it in practically no time. Imagine doing that. You go to the dealer and you buy a Toyota today or a Honda. There's no way that you could have that kind of ability to tear things down to the individual parts and reassemble them that easily with very little technical know-how.
I've seen the video.
Yeah, it's a famous video. It's
Yeah,
just
It is not possible now. You know why? It is not possible now. Do you know why?
There's
so many NTSB regulation to make sure it saves a life. I see a $35,000 car that front end, collision into something at the 25 miles an hour speed, and it totaled the whole damn car like that. Why? Because he saved the passenger.
Yeah.
There's so many regulation from NTSB to make sure that you are safe.
Yeah.
I would not drive in a Jeep that can be taken apart in 10 minutes, my dear friend, even if you pay me.
You probably wouldn't ride a bicycle either on the roads of Palo Alto.
Tell me about this. Thank you. I'm complete.
Sure,
Sammy, go for it. Yeah.
So everything that Sam and Digvijay have been saying, I do agree with. If you are deeply aware or even just a member of a system that is actually based on a profit motive or based on the capitalist principles. But even Buckminster Fuller 60 or 70 years ago was already saying, we have enough for everyone. We just don't have the means or the will to take care of everyone. So we have a system that doesn't take care of everyone, but it makes it possible for essentially capitalism to basically operate like an escalator for money to the rich.
Right.
So the point here is it does take introduction to new ways of thinking before we can actually enact plans and move assets and resources and people towards it. So I'll remind you that one of the people that inspires me is Doug Engelbart. Now, Doug Engelbart showed people a bunch of technologies in December of 1968 that today is still driving technical innovation. Collaboration, multimedia, hypertext, windowing, that's probably mastered already. But the mouse, yeah, clearly that's the first thing that he's acknowledged for. But somebody says, hey, Doug, you're just a visionary. He was once criticized as being, hey, you're just a visionary. And his response was, you think that's easy? You think it's easy being mocked and to hold your stance and to know that, this is the vision for the future? You think that's easy? It's hard being a visionary because people will dismiss you because you're not creating billions and trillions. And he wasn't creating billions and trillions, but each of his ideas were creating billions for other people. Logitech was built on his ideas. Microsoft was built on his ideas. Even Apple was founded on, his ideas. There's so many companies that have been based on the demo that came out of 1968. And that demo still has ideas that haven't been turned into profitable products yet. I don't know if you guys know what the corded key set is, but that's one that takes a little bit more training than the mouse. The mouse takes almost no training. Like in 2 minutes, you can master the mouse. But the coordinate key set takes about half a day or maybe a couple days. Therefore, it's not known to the public. So the point I'm trying to say is, until a vision is shared, you're not going to get companies investing in that vision. And that vision, without making sense, is going to just lead to more and more chaos. So that's why I think, even back at least 12, 13 years ago, if I look at well-intentioned people, hundreds, thousands, millions, saying, oh, I see that problem over there, I'm going to do something to go fix that problem. And other people say, oh, there's that problem over there, I'm going to do something to go fix that problem. Why in this society do we make those people compete? This society inherently makes people compete. If I'm trying to start a new idea that's based on an insight that I've got, let's say in one particular field of, let's say, psychology or science or biology or chemistry or food research or whatever, okay? If I'm going to make that idea real in this society, now I have to learn a bunch of other skills that I really wish I didn't know. I have to learn how to compete. I have to know legal terms. I have to know how to deal with the law. I have to learn how to deal with bad employees. I have to deal with financial structures. I have to deal with just a bunch of stuff that weren't inherently part of what I wanted to provide to society. Now, if we were an awakened society, society might actually say, oh, well, here's a person that knows the law. Let me have that person help you. There's a person that knows about people. Let me have that help you. Okay. Now, you might argue, oh, yeah, that's called an incubator. Yeah, but the incubators are sucking assets out of these ideas also. They're not actually looking for the interests of these good ideas. They're looking to make a profit. Okay. And they're making, ungodly demands on equity share based on that assistance that they provide. Okay. But if you had some awareness that we wanted to bring more cooperation, more cross-fertilization of ideas, and you want to make everybody successful, not just the guys that end up with billions and trillions, but you want to make everyone successful and healthy and thriving, okay? You would think differently about the fundamental rules you set up in this game. See, if you look at 40, 50 years ago in Japan, the highest paid people were making what, 40, 50 times more than the average? And they had very little homelessness. They had working transportation systems. They had everybody, basically contributing to society, very low rates of unemployment. If you look at the US today, even a couple of years ago, it was 800 or more X. What, the top employees, top officers of a company were making relative to the average employee. And I think by now it's probably even worse. Now, if you take a look at what the highest extremes of that are doing, what, somewhere around 6 people own more than half the people on the planet? Some number like that, okay? So Buckminster Fuller showed that it was possible for everyone to be taken care of. We just don't care to do it. We absolutely have to face ourselves and say, we bleeping don't care. Take a look at that homeless person. We bleeping don't care about you as a society. And that, if I'm going to call anything sin or anything evil, that's it. So yes, you can go and think systemically and say, well, we can't afford to have population grow, 10% every year or even 3% every year. Yes, that's true. There is a limit. But are you going to impose that limit by first, just making sure that all the poor people die first? Is that ethical? We have a very unethical system today that actually doesn't leverage the capabilities we're already capable of. We just don't care. And as we start caring again, we're not going to level up.
I want to add it on that, Sam, and I totally agree with you, because I think even in India, like 3 decades ago, the topics which I've come across, like I heard from my seniors and people who are much more experienced, that the terms like ethics, morals, and values, probity, these topics were the regular terms which were used in defining social hierarchies. That more, the higher you climb, the more responsible you are to take care of these terms. And what I see around Gen Z nowadays is that a rapid growth in the NPD, that is the narcissistic personality disorder, and they overvalue themselves, and market has somehow devised a way in incentivizing these characteristics. So I think that's a very that's the thing that I'm really scared about, because I studied about ethics, morality, and probity a few months ago while I was studying philosophy, and how the society functions, and how we have how we have made it possible to work around each other even though we don't agree with each other absolutely. So I think one thing I want to ask you, that what have changed over the past half a century, that sometimes you feel like that there is a very positive change in the society, and sometimes it feel like that what we have made out of it, like this is insane that we are doing right now. So according to you, what have changed? Because I don't have that lens to dig that deep into the history. So I would ask you that how you come up with this thing, that on what parameters that we have improved. And like I said, that the narcissistic personality disorder have spiked over the past half a century in the United States, and maybe in India as well. I don't have the stats from here. That there was just like 19% people who were having this NPD, and now it's around 82%. And we have devised a way, due to social media and influencers, that we incentivize being narcissistic, and we see it as a part of being successful in the society, and our very definition is very corrupt. So what do you suggest? What would you like to add on that? On what parameters that we have improved, and on what parameters we have been very unfair?
May I answer that in brief? Okay, I'll just say two things, okay? On the positive side, what has changed in the last 50 years? People are more connected. It is possible for you and I to share a conversation via this mechanism. But 40, 50 years ago, it was very hard to do. Yeah, we could have found each other's phone numbers, but there was no reason to. So that infrastructure, this whole internet thing, is clearly something that we didn't have 50 years ago. Now, there's lots more, but I'm going to just use one example. Con side, we've had, at least in the United States, but there's evidence in other countries, that there's been an intentional, it appears intentional, deprecation of the education system in the United States. We don't teach science well, we don't teach mathematics well, we don't teach history well, we barely teach, language, we barely teach, well, actually, we don't even teach common sense. We don't teach logic. We don't even teach sociology. So I think there's almost been an intentional degradation of the way people think, because it seems across the board, these courses have gone away. And it's done to such a degree, at least in the United States, that I have a suspicion that it's intentional and it's systemic.
It is.
And that therefore creates a population that is easily malleable, easily controlled. And why?
Exactly.
Because it's not just the last 20, 30, 40 years. It's been through 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years. There's always been kings, and then there's always been the peasants.
Yep.
And we're being made into peasants because kings want to be kings.
Yep.
I'll just stop there.
Absolutely.
There's a lot
I think
more.
Ray Dalio shared it. Ray Dalio shared this thing in his book, the latest book he has. I think it's Principles of Changing World Order. And he has shared the model of how a rise of the country is defined. And he had shared 8 parameters. And the first one is education. And then comes, I think, the industrialization and stuff like that. And the last one is the pegging of their currency onto the global scale, that their currency becomes the standard. So, and all of it is connected by the character of the citizens, that the citizens of the character of the citizens of any nation is very pivotal in defining that what this nation is going to be in next century. And one of the things that I have come across during a podcast I was listening, and he was an Indian entrepreneur, he shared the idea that that how people being fair and genuine will result in GDP growth. And he was sharing this model, this logistics model of this online shopping app in India called Flipkart, which offers an option to the people that they can exchange the goods or they can return the goods without even paying anything extra. So what it has incentivized in people that they will order all the three sizes of an article of an apparel, and they will try out, and the one that fits they will keep it, and the other two they will return without paying the extra shipping cost of or whatever. And he stated that this thing is a menace to the GDP, that this people being unfair with the system is actually degrading the quality of the services that we are going to enjoy in the future by these sites. So he has this shopping site of his own, and he charges this extra returning or what we say exchange cost of the articles that he sells. And I totally agree with that, because I never thought it that way. Because once this honesty is incentivized, then people can trust more on each other and they can rely on each other more. And I think that's the best way to go through any tough situation. And whenever there is a trust issue into a society, into a house, or into a community, then things fall apart for sure. And I don't see any standard to hold on to if these systems fall. That if we don't create better systems to function, then what should I rely on? Surely not AI, for sure. But what are the other systems that I can rely on, and how to create those systems, being an honest citizen or being an honest citizen of the globe? That what things I shall start investing into, so that these things become the fancy terms of the future, that we shall incentivize these knowledge, we shall incentivize these things, because I just want to glamorize knowledge as well, because I think now most of people in India as well are suffering from mental disorders more than anything physical. And I think this is the trend in all over the world, in developing or developed nations. And most of the times, what I've come across are the ideas which are, people take it for granted. And it's just because I was leaning into the philosophy more and more in last 6 months, I came across these things called what's the difference between self-confidence and narcissism. And while I was studying on that, I came across things that like I was blown away by the fact that these things are out there for free, and it's not the part of the curriculum that a student shall learn by the time he's into 10th grade, because things were very basic. But just because they were never talked about, those things were not into the streams of our social constructs. What do you suggest on that? That how shall we start building things on that, and how shall we reintroduce these factors more and more?
I have a response, but I know I've been talking a lot.
No, go ahead. It keeps the flow going. Go ahead, Sam.
My response, and I'm glad you mentioned knowledge, DBJ, is that the way we handle information and the way information is either trustworthy or not trustworthy has been foundational to the erosion of society, because people can't recognize truth. And not only can they not recognize truth, they can't recognize evidence-based assertions. They can't recognize well-reasoned thoughts and well-reasoned conclusions. They can't even recognize assumptions. So this dynamic knowledge repository idea, which is too fancy a name, most people are not going to get it, but the idea of a shared global memory or some sort of resource that allows us to question the veracity of every statement or every claim or every article offered is crucial. If we don't have that, then we don't base our decisions and our thinking and our planning and our resource allocation based on truth. And I say truth with a lowercase t, not truth with a big capital T, okay? Not absolute truth, but the best knowledge we have at the time is lowercase t truth. And if we don't have this way of saying, hey, this article is based on these other 5, and it's based on that assumption, and it's based on this researcher, and we can look at the credentials of that researcher, where they got their training, and other collaborators of that researcher, and other citing, articles and claims, and you can sort of look at this complex network of knowledge and evidence and reasoning. And if you can take a claim like global climate change versus, hey, this is all a hoax. And if you take a look at, hey, where this hoax claim comes from versus claims of, well, what's the data supporting climate change? Where the experiments, where all the sensors, where all the measurements, where all the studies, where all the climatological models, where all the environmental models, where all the EM models, where all the population models, blah, 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 okay? And if you sort of balance out these two claims and you look at the structure that supports one and you look at how hollow the other one is, and if we can actually learn to do this, we have a chance. But that's not easy. Most people are not used to doing that. And not only is that not easy, it's being discredited. Science is being discredited right and left. That's why I got this t-shirt, by the way. You see this, right? Come on, focus. Okay. Come on. All right. Anyway, so for the record, if people can actually learn how to think and how to believe and how to question, and that is not being attacked, and those are big ifs, because all of that is being attacked these days. Again, incumbent upon that is sorry, not incumbent, that's the wrong word, but a corollary or aligned with that is this notion that truth can be bought. See, here in the US, years ago, there was this act that I guess it's called Citizens United by some stupid term, where money can now be very effective in politics. Money can buy elections. Money can buy candidates. Money can buy nominees even. And that means that, truth doesn't matter. It's whoever's got the more millions and billions and trillions that are going to affect the outcome of elections. That has to get countered. So it's an attack on that monetary side, and then it's another attack on the truth side that we have to overcome. So it's not easy, but there's a path through this. And I actually believe that if leveraged correctly, AI can help us do this. Because AI will grow in its floor of competence and floor of intelligence. I made this point yesterday. Whereas humans, there's no limit to human stupidity and human idiocy. But AI, at least if leveraged properly, can bring some minimum level of competence to almost any argument, any position, any decision, any plan. So I'm not going to detail it, but there's a glimpse of optimism here for me. Over.
I have a comment on why the corded keyboard never took root. In 1954, when I was in elementary school, I was in 4th grade in 1954, they introduced a module into the curriculum to enable students like me to learn some music. And the item that made this possible was a little plastic flute. It's a flute about a foot long, and it's basically a plastic tube with 4 holes for one hand and 4 holes for the other. Your thumb went on the bottom, and
you talking about a recorder, quote unquote.
Sometimes called a recorder, except recorder was a real musical device. The song flute was just cheap piece of plastic with 4 holes in the top, but it's fundamentally the same as recorder. So you could cover all 8 holes with your 8 fingers on top, and you could blow to it. And then to get a note, you would typically open 1 or 2 fingers. Now, with 8 holes, that's 256 ways to chord the holes, but there's not 256 notes in music. There's, I don't know, however many you want to figure, but basically you would open up 1 or 2 or maybe 3 holes. And that was the way you had to play these things. The program of learning to play the song flute utterly failed. And I know why it failed. I couldn't possibly arrange my fingers to open 1, 2, or 3 holes to get a particular note that you wanted to play. It was hopeless. And if people like me, and most people were like me, couldn't possibly operate a song flute where you had to open up 1, 2, or 3 holes, how could you ever use a corded keyboard? Go
It's
ahead,
called
John.
muscle memory. If you train your muscle to have the memory, then you don't do it without, you can do it without thinking.
How many hours?
5.
That's what it takes.
We would do
That's
this
that's the
for-
point I'm going to make. Okay, right here. What just now? There's so many things in here. A lot of them are generalization, which is impossible to deal with. I'm going to focus on one thing and one thing only. What Sam was talking about is that how come somebody have to learn, have a great idea, but then they have to learn years to learn to do something so that people can accept their thing. I'm just going to take a simple example of what we do. Language. It takes years for us to build our language vocabulary so that you and I can communicate. How much time do you have that you can listen to 20,000 different baby talks? This person doesn't know how to do it, like the Tarzan in the jungle. All they grew up with baby talk. Some learn from some learn from the bear or whatever that is. There are 20,000 of them. Can you imagine you learn 20,000 different baby talks for around the world so you can understand them? No, it doesn't work. You have to go the other way, which is you need to learn your language so that people can understand you. Unless people can understand you. So in order for me to get a PhD, guess what? I need to have a thesis that quoted thousands of, maybe hundreds of articles or whatever it is, the one that's relevant to my study. Again, it's the same thing. It's even English. If I speak something with Chinese word in it, you lose it. You learn. If I speak without proper grammar, I have use of you don't understand what I'm talking about. It's the same thing. We have to fit in. We take the time to fit in before we can contribute. The reason we fit in is so that people can efficiently understand us, accept us, have confidence in us. And that's how confidence is. That's how rapport is. That's how you can, before you can lead someone, you have to pace them. If that makes sense.
Just point out that an ordinary ASCII keyboard, typewriter keyboard, is technically you almost never chord it. You typically use one finger to press one key at a time, with the possible exception of the shift key. Occasionally you'll press a shift key and a regular key, two fingers going down, and people will take a course in high school in typing or whatever you take, and it takes a semester to learn to type on a keyboard without hunt and peck. If it takes that long for people to learn typing on a standard keyboard, which is not chorded, one finger at a time, basically, imagine, now you know why it was so bloody hard to learn the song flute.
No, okay,
Yep.
so there I'm going to disagree with you. It'll take either the same amount of time or less to learn a chorded key set if you start from the same position, okay? Because all you got to learn are what to do with these 5 fingers. And a typewriter, you got to learn what to do with these 10 fingers, okay? It's approximately the same level of complexity, but arguably, you can learn chords of combinations of these fingers, and that's it. This is A, this is B, this is C, this is D, this is E, this is F, this is G, this is H, this is I, okay? It's not that hard. It takes about 5 hours to learn.
Long and prosper. I simply don't have the
That's
take
this.
live
Yeah.
long and prosper.
But anyway,
Hello?
If
Can you
you
hear
can
me now?
make claims
Yes.
about
Yep,
how
we can hear you.
long it's going to take to learn things, but it's not that much different than a standard keyboard. Oh,
I just want to touch on what I think Barry's point is that when you make something more complicated, it's harder and it's causing more processes. But what's the value of those processes and what's the neuroplasticity that you're creating and joining? Go ahead, Sam. You have something to say?
if you're trying to go around your backyard, a tricycle is fine. If you try to go 10 blocks away to the shopping center, you're probably not going to take a tricycle. You're probably going to take a bike. But isn't the bike much harder to learn than a tricycle?
It is.
Likewise, if you're going to go from California to New York, you're not going to go on a bike. You're probably going to take a car or buy some ticket on some other vehicle. Likewise, if you're going to go to the moon, you're not going to do it in a car. You're not going to do it in a bike. You got to look at where you're trying to go. Now, if you want to do simple-minded tasks, yeah, we already got the tools. Everybody knows how to do simple-minded tasks. But if we really want to collaborate, which takes more understanding of what we're trying to do, we have to learn to use new tools if we're going to level up. Now, if you don't want to learn how to use a bike, stay in your backyard. If you don't want to learn how to drive a vehicle, stay in your neighborhood. Those are your choices. Over.
I think it's also the belief that there's something worth traveling to in the next town over as well. And it's one thing to, some people are more curious than others. And I think with knowledge, it comes down to curiosity, support, and a belief system that you can eventually not master it, but get to proficiency. And that sort of encouragement, to me, societies are based off of inspiration by showing examples to other people that not only did I learn how to do it, but it was very difficult for me when I started. I persisted. I reached a level of precision that allowed me to do the thing I wanted to do, and the encouragement for others to try that. And I think that is what I'm seeing is lacking. Like when I heard Digvijay talk about this narcissistic personality disorder, there's too many people watching someone do something and judging it and saying, hey, you did it really good. Oh, here's a like, here's a click, here's your credit assignment. I'm giving you credit for doing that, but they're not participating. And the example I use is I started DJing and I had to buy a record needle to DJ that cost $150 so the needle wouldn't break. It had to be able to go back and forth on a record if you want to scratch it. But it's an expensive little tool that most people don't want to buy. But once you buy it, you don't want to let anyone else use it. No one else should be, wrecking your records because they're very expensive and hard to collect. But one of my favorite things to do was to take people that have never DJ'd, stick them in front of the device and say, go ahead. I'll pay an extra $40 to get that record again if you ruin it. But the joy that I watched of people who got to use this expensive $2,000 DJ equipment with a $150 needle was priceless to me. And to me, that's the energy that I don't see in society of someone saying, hey, I just bought, like just recently, we just purchased a Tesla car and I would like to get all of my friends inside of the wheel and let them drive it just to experience an iPad on wheels because it is a different experience. It really is. The way the accelerator works, the regenerative braking, it is not like a golf cart. It's not like a motorized car. It's got a whole different energy and feel. And I think that inspiration going from high technology to low technology is needed all throughout the world. I think people should experience making their own bricks as well as going to Home Depot and buying 2x4s and building a house. And with that, I'm complete.
Oh, wait. I know I've been talking a lot.
I'm gonna jump in on this one here because it's important to talk about it. In everything that need to be succeeded, all the factors must be all lined up together. You have the teacher to be ready to teach you. You have the equipment. You feel safe. You have a competitive reason. All that stuff have to be. Everything has to be perfect. Just to give an example, iPhone was not successful at the time of Newton. Why? Because the market is not ready for it yet. Say all you need is one little factor. I call it multiply by zero factor. Because of the multiply by zero factor is, whatever you want to call it, have a curse on you or have a spell on you or whatever the reason is all you do is miss that one thing. If you miss the bus by 1 second, you miss the bus. It's as simple as that. So everything have to be all lined up together, everything be ready. So it's you can think of it as karma, there's law of consequences, there's law of readiness, there's law of all that stuff. Everything have to line up together in order for us to get the magnifying glass under the sun that can burn a hole in the on a piece of paper. So again, everything had to be aligned out. So until that happened, nothing happened. Even as rich as Apple cannot get an iPhone, ready 20 years before its time, whatever you want to call it. Even 5 years before its time, it's not ready. I'm complaining.
Helicopter was invented 400 years before it was built. And the reason it took so bloody long was because metallurgy wasn't up to the task. The blades that are rotating also have to pitch. And the part that operates the pitch of the blade as it rotates required metallurgy beyond the state of the art. And it wasn't until around 1900 or 1920 that finally metallurgy caught up to the requirement to make a blade that could pitch as it rotated. And within a few years, Bell and Sikorsky both built the first working helicopters on a design that Leonardo had worked out, 400 years earlier. One thing was holding it up. Metallurgy wasn't up to the task.
So cross-discipline of metallurgy and engineering and aviation, those cross disciplines, I think that's what I'm trying to state is that's what's needed is we need to get into rooms with each other and share the little one thing that we're working on that someone goes, hey, that's the piece I've been looking for. There it is. That's what I see missing is that sharing is the greatest technology of the human existence and not just sharing with each other in humanity. I've been I talked to Doug Breitbart about a month and a half ago, and I told him I'm going to research what is going on with these large language models to understand the languages of all the creatures on Earth. Because if we don't share the reality of an amoeba or a tiny single cell organism floating in the ocean with a bird in the sky, an eagle, so on and so forth, all these different amazing creatures, we'll miss that one piece that expands humanity to the place we need to be. And there's so many pieces, it's infinite in this puzzle, but people are hoarding and hiding their pieces. That's what I think is a problem. It's not just, I'm going to open source it for a second. It's the way the culture open sources it so that everyone has a chance to dig through the pile and see if they find the piece they need. With that, I'm complete.
Yeah, I would like to add on that as well, Jimmy, that you sent me that video yesterday. And I watched that video, and one thing that resonated with me so greatly is that I want to share this story that I was in my convocation 2 to 3 months ago, and there was this scientist who was present at our convocation, and he gave a little speech on that how the technology drives the concepts. Like we used to think the other way around, that you have first the concept, then you build things on that concepts. That's the job of a scientist. And then engineers take that idea and they build technologies. But actually, he broke my notion of thinking that it's the ideas that inspire technologies. It's also the technologies that inspires concepts. And that's what I've also come across that video. And the phrase was that science progress not because of things that we see, but because we increase our ability to perceive. And he was talking about this semantic language modeling of different animals and how they talk about. So I think that was a really eye-opener, and I would really thank you for sending me that, because it resonated with me so great. And he gave that scientist gave an example of the telescope and a microscope that we invented. When we invented telescope and microscope, we were actually unaware of a lot of discoveries that we are about to witness using those technologies. And those technologies have driven a lot of concepts on its own.
I'll give you another example of a breakthrough. Harry Nyquist and Claude Shannon collectively came up with the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem. And the idea was that you didn't have to send the entire wavefront if you knew it was band limited, that like in speech doesn't go up above about 10 kilohertz, or in music doesn't go up above about 20 kilohertz. And the notion that you could take samples and not have the whole thing, Harry Nyquist worked out that you needed to only sample at twice the highest frequency. And Claude Shannon sort of elaborated why that was the case. And the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem was an intellectual mathematical breakthrough that made the digital era possible. How many samples do you need to do the job? Thank you, Harry Nyquist. How many people who never heard of Harry Nyquist? Probably heard of Claude Shannon. But
Never heard of, but thank you for introducing.
If it wasn't for Harry Nyquist around 1920 and Claude Shannon around 1950, you wouldn't have digital communications. You wouldn't know how to do it.
This is a very important point that you just point out, that I want to remind everybody that a good master mechanic is a terrible car workshop or whatever, car repair shop. You know, the person that have theoretical physics doesn't know how to do the experiment. You know, it's the same thing. Unless you chunk it down to the very, because the technology is so precise, so detail oriented. We have to give ability to the person that's really, really good at it. And the implementation is something else. So someone maybe have great ideas, but the idea is only like a seed. Unless you know how to farm it, I know how to put in the ground and put water and sunlight and all that stuff, nothing happens. So we have ideas all we want. We have thousands and millions of ideas every day.
I mean, just, if you think about it for an hour, you should be able to figure it out. You only need a sample at twice the frequency, but how many decimal places do you need each sample? Shannon tells you how many decimal places you need at each sample, and Nyquist tells you how often you have to take a sample. And together you get the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem, and 2 people out of 8 billion on the planet figured it out. They were both at Bell Labs. And they did that work, you know, a century ago.
So in the idea and spirit of protocol, Barry, how I just saw Sam's post about collaboration. The timing, like a dance, when do you take a step forward? When do you pass it on to the next group? When do you take it back? So to me, everything is a dance, as you're stepping forward, and then the person that you're dancing with, once you've stepped back, they have to step forward. And knowing that timing is the music.
Right.
So how do you write the piece of music that allows for a group of people to collaborate by knowing who's working on what when? To me, that's the protocol that I'd like to see, which I know there's a whole science around that. But does anyone have examples of a way to pass information back and forth from group to group without arguing and fighting? Does anyone?
But one thing I'll point out, the whole point of the protocol, whether it's dancing or collision avoidance in a packet network, it's don't step on the other guy's toes. In dancing, a collision is a disaster. You step on the other person's toes or you trip them. And the same concept, don't collide, don't trip the other guy up. Each person has to be in their place at the right time, and not 2 people in the same place at the same time. And the figuring out how to do that efficiently to avoid collision or recover from collisions, dancers have to learn that, and packet networks had to learn that. Once you see it, you go, duh. Of course, you don't want to step on the other guy's toes if you're dancing, but how do you accomplish that reliably, efficiently, that's learnable and practicable?
But yeah, in the metaphor, when you're dancing, you have a hand here and a hand behind the person. So you're pushing and pulling. So my ask is, maybe Sam, I think you were about to speak, Sam Chan, is there a name? Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you.
I'm going to look at it from the physics perspective or the dancing perspective. Use either example. Which one would you like me to go? The dancing one.
I would like to know the name. Like Sam Han named it Collaborology, but I don't know the steps in Collaborology. I don't know the motion, so
Got it.
I want to know
Okay.
the name.
I
Yeah.
collaborate a lot with a lot of my vendors and customers and my groups and all that stuff. So I'm going to use specific example. Just use the word dancing. Okay. Do you know how many people on earth that have the opportunity to dance? They have work 3 jobs and pay the bills and take care of the kids and all that stuff. So I want you to think of all the 7 billion. How many people now drop off the list? So you got few and few people have the time, have a dance floor, have the right dance shoe, have the music, they have 5 after finish dinner, have someone they really like. All the criteria. Now you can see how many people left on the dancing floor, right? So in order for you to have dancing floor, you need to like the person, you need to have the music, you have the time, you have the place for it, you probably have to pay for a lesson, you have the time to watch a video that do all that stuff. So in order for you to transfer that dancing technology, all these things must, and then I have the desire to impress my girlfriend, so I want to dance. So again, I have a compelling reason. All the things must be all lined up. So in order for me to collaborate so that I can have a dance, 20 people dance or whatever, night or whatever you call it, a square dance or whatever. So in order for that to happen, you have to have a compelling reason. I had the resources, I had the time for it, and I have to have the awareness. I have my body have to work. Of course, my leg doesn't move. I cannot do that. So all the criteria. So again, let's go back to the Collaborology, right? You need to have the compelling reason. Unless I do this, I would die. Okay, the very high compelling reason. Unless I do this, I'm in trouble. Unless I do this, I mean whatever. So that's compelling reason there. So is there a compelling reason? Yeah. So think of Hawaii fire, right? They all come together now. They help each other. Why? Because there's a big fire that kill a lot of people. So now they have the love coming from chaos. Unless we have another disaster, the Collaborology have no compelling reason to get together to collaborate. So we're missing that one piece. I call it multiply by 0 factor. Remember? So missing that one piece. The second piece is that how many people have the time? It's like wine. The wine you can only enjoy after you have your dinner, you have food on the table. You're not going to drink wine and with an empty stomach and don't eat for 3 days. Most people do nowadays. So again, compelling reason, the conditions, all the criteria have to meet together in order for the Collaborology to happen.
Yeah,
If that
exactly.
makes sense at all.
Exactly. This is why a lot of collaborations don't work, because the one collaborator you need ain't there. The one that's missing is missing.
So if I hear you right, it's like event planning. You need someone to put out the sofas. You need someone to put out the water, you need to create the space for the collaboration.
Let me tell you what a collaborator works, okay? There's an event called Miss Universe Collaborology, right? Everybody come together, want to look pretty, and get a trophy and get awards. There's a lot of comparison for those young lady that looks good, lose weight. They come together, and the people that want to watch them have the comparison to look at some pretty lady's body or whatever you want to call that. So this Collaborology works because the Miss Universe event happen every year, and draw a lot of audience and create a lot of money for the people that organize it. See how the factors come together in a successful Collaborology, as well as Olympics, as well as World Cup. You look at all the successful Collaborology that's happening. Why? Because all the factors are check.
So if I'm hearing you right, I remember we actually went over this some years ago when we tried different
Oh,
You cannot collaborate with the spotty
in the
Wi-Fi
dance
signal.
floor. Yeah, did I freeze? I'm sorry.
seconds.
So the question is, how do you decide who does what, when, and where?
Well, how did Donald Trump decide when it was time to go into the girls' dressing room in the beauty contest in Moscow? Why was that a part of the collaboration to put on a beauty contest?
Well, so what you're saying is about the primal instincts of the mammalian brain is the driving factors, and to
You
be
got it.
aware of those things and allow those
Yep.
things to not just happen in a way that clashes, where they're annoying the ladies backstage, but a way that uplifts and brings them to the next Trump beauty contest in Atlantic City.
You got to know your role, play your role, and not screw it up by interjecting a role that doesn't belong.
Yeah. But who manages that? I think that to me is the big $10 million, billion-dollar question is who manages it in a way that's not power over. Like when Doug Breitbart was here, he would say it's all of us or none of us, but there's a balance between all of us and one of us managing their role properly without trying to teach everyone to do every role, because that's impossible.
Where is the deity of ethics in this whole system? The deity of ethics is thrown away. We don't want a deity of ethics. Throw it away. Okay, then you get Trump.
Well, I mean, that's not one to one right there. I think there's a lot of factors in between, but
There's
I
no
think
deity of ethics who's supervising the ethics component. The ethics component is left unattended. Nobody's in charge of ethics. It's unattended.
to me,
Okay,
I think
so
it's go ahead, Sam.
there's several other factors also. I want to make sure you guys look at it from different perspective. There's people that sabotage. There's something to gain. There's conflict of interest. You know, there's something that if you win, I will lose. So I want to get the goal, so I'm going to pull you down and all that stuff. Again, there's so many things that go around it, and also there's nature. If I want to have an Olympic on snow, but there's no snow, you won't have an Olympic on the snow, right? So again, there's so many factors that need to come together. The key really thing is that when it happens, it's great. When it doesn't happen, you cannot convince someone. I cannot give you a compelling reason that it doesn't exist. So I want you to come to California right now. I'll take you for a 5-star restaurant. Like, well, the comparison is not strong enough, so sorry, I'm not coming. But if I say, well, you come here, we can go to space together. Guess what? You get on the first plane to get here, right? Or we have an empty seat for you and to go to the galactic, you know, like, were you coming? Of course I'm coming, right? So again, everybody have a different level of comparison. Everybody have a different world. Hidden agenda, shall I call it? God knows what. When something doesn't happen, it means that the time is not right, the comparison is not strong enough, and all that stuff. And people are not people might be sabotaging, like the drug, the big farm, right? We talk about big farm. Guess what? We have all those people that work in the government, you know, building for the big farm to make sure that certain things doesn't happen or certain things should happen, whatever you want to call that. So again, collaboration is all about making sure that all this thing is happening. And the things that shouldn't happen should not happen.
I couldn't even get my 4 fingers to collaborate on the song flute. There's maybe 56 ways to do it right and 234 ways to do it wrong. And most of the time I'm getting, you know, the majority of the ways are not musical. I can't get my fingers
The reason you cannot do it because, Barry, the reason you cannot do it because somebody put a gun in your head, say, do it on a pull a trigger in 30 minutes.
Right. Once a week for an hour or 30 minutes, we had music teacher with the song flutes, and there was not enough time to even understand the concept, let alone the
I'll send a pretty young lady. I'll put a nice dessert that you love in front of you, so on and so forth, to make sure there's enough comparison that's I want to learn this.
Right.
I think you just nailed it right there, Barry. It comes down to time. I think we all decided to spend our time together today, and that was a decision we made. And time is a resource that is being sucked up by attention economy. And that to me is the biggest thing, is when you see people that are successful, they'll all tell you, I put in a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Time and attention are scarce resources, and practice. You know, people want to do things. I say, practice, practice, practice. If you have a recipe, the first 3 or 4 times you make it, it doesn't come out very good. You read the instructions, you thought you followed the instructions, but it didn't come out. And finally, maybe the 15th time, you make a perfect souffle. Practice, practice, practice.
So if we created the societies that gave more time, meaning you can look at all different societies around the world, some of them have 7, 8, 9 hours dedicated just to listening to what's going on in nature, and other societies like say your modern American city, they're lucky if they get 5 hours on a weekend to go out into nature once a month.
Not enough time and not enough practice to become to have to be able to discern what's right, what's working, and what's not working, and why 240 ways to put your fingers are wrong and 12 ways are right.
Mhm.
It's about time. I want to share with you something. I don't travel to another country or another town until my friend can have the time to come with me and spend time with me. Otherwise, I won't be traveling. That's my criteria. You want me to come and visit you, pick me up in the airport and take me around and stay in your house and go eat with me and spend time together. That's how we spend time together. Otherwise, I'm not coming. And I'm not interested to go to the tourist attraction and take pictures and come home. Like, who cares about that? We can do Photoshop on that matters.
Yeah. Yeah, the value of exchanging experience of time with another person is
Yeah.
yeah.
There's another criteria I want to mention also. We talk about 50 years. What's the difference between 50 years ago and 50 years now? So like when I was 50 years ago, I was 12 years old, 13 years old. Okay, so I grew up in a small fisher village. When there's not enough food, I just go to the garden and pull out the the veggie and off the ground and all that stuff. I have no internet. The library for the school is just one bookshelf with about 30 books. That's all we got. I never see I don't have a fridge. I don't have a washing machine. Everything's all done by hand. Guess what? I don't have a lot of bills either. I don't have air conditioning. I don't have a lot of bills either. So guess what? I'm free. I can play all day with my friend. But nowadays, I got all the bills I need to pay because I got modern conveniences. Guess what? Which I can go back to Malaysia or India, wherever, like in the remote area, and live the same way I have. No modern conveniences and no internet and no communication, but I have all the time in the world in my hand. It's a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, the best choice I ever made was getting out of the city and moving into the country. And that extra time, I think I couldn't even package it up and sell it to you because it was priceless. There was some
Yep.
moments where I got stuck in a snowstorm. And so just to defrost the water to drink it took time. But in the time that it took to melt that snow in order to keep myself alive, I got to walk outside and see things that I can't explain. I wish I had a poetry book to explain the experiences of the sun glistening off of the ice crystals that formed a certain way, and the feeling of it shining back onto the clouds, and just like Barry's thing in his background. Like, how do you explain what that looks like in real life? The Aurora Borealis.
Yeah.
It's
You have the tools to do that now, Josh. So upload the picture to Bart, give all the pointers that you just mentioned. I promise you the beautiful poem just come right out, and musical or song or whatever, it can be written just like that.
yeah, I did. I tried to put a picture every day up on Facebook for about 15 years. And there were some people that really loved it and they would say, I miss it when it's not there. And I noticed the algorithm of Facebook didn't push those things out the way that it did the other types of pictures that were out there. It's really interesting to me what we value in terms of beauty, not just nature, but in terms of what someone is saying from their heart and soul, that is just so prolific. Like what Dick VJ said about technology creating something. I just watched a video about a new language model. I recommend for you guys to use it. It's a Google's Text FX, the letter F and the letter X. Text FX, think with Google. And it's a way to sort of like, to me, the most important part of the internet was a website called Stumble Upon. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Heard of them, yeah.
And before all these algorithms took hold of our lives, we had some more randomness involved in the way that the internet was just set up, the protocols. And I think that's what's missing is it's guided in the form of capitalism to purchase a product or a service, as opposed to pull in that time and energy to get curious about things. It's, I think we just need to stop and say, hey, we've got access to way too much information right now. We need to take, if I was the president of the world, I would say, okay, let's all stop, take 20 years to digest what we just did, and then resume. And when I say stop, I mean stop the capitalism and just make sure we all have food, water, shelter, the basics, digest everything, and then, move forward. But it's not possible. But that's
Well,
my,
it's possible. It's possible. All you do is download the thing on a big hard drive and bring it with you to the mountain.
well, that's what there's. Do you know George Hotz? Are you familiar with him? He's a guy that hacked the iPhone, a young kid. He's a little nerdy technician guy. He's working on an AI for self-driving cars with Android phones, but yada yada yada. He has a new company called Tiny Machines, where he's trying to take the whole Lambda or Falcon model and put it onto a little. It's a large machine, a big GPU heavy machine, and run it through the same power outlet as we do our Tesla cars. So you have your own giant server network in your house for, $4,000.
Yeah. NVIDIA have those A1000 or A100 machines now that you can buy. They are on 6-week lead time, but you can buy them now.
Just so you know,
Have
Sam,
all
before
AI.
I moved to the mountains, I downloaded from it was a peer-to-peer network, and also I was using BitTorrent, and I downloaded every movie that I could possibly download onto a server, and I took that up to the mountains with me. So I watched every movie I possibly could. Yeah, because I had the time. That was awesome.
Yeah. I wish I have the time.
Yeah.
I wish I had the time. One time, I remember I was flying to Brazil. I was flying the business class. She gave me like 120 DVD discs and then DVD player and noise cancelling Bose headphone. I said, well, too many, that's enough movies for me to last me 6 months. But the flight is only 12 hours.
But it's good to have that choice of something inspires you and it moves you in that direction. Much like I used to love having a large bookshelf, and I would collect books because I knew there were some that were reference books, but some that led me from book to book. So I could
Let me
go
give you
like yeah.
Let me give you a different perspective of choice. The reason you have a choice is like if you look at another woman, it's like that could be a choice for my wife. No, because you don't love your wife. If you love your wife, there's no need to have another choice because she's the only person I need. Does that make sense to you?
It does, but you can have platonic relationships with women that give you an energy that you bring back to your wife that's not sexual, but can improve your relationship,
I'm
both
not saying I'm
male
not
or
going that
female.
far. I'll say that I
Yeah.
need a wife. I don't need a choice for a second wife.
No, I understand what you're saying as far as making a decision to invest time into one specific thing or one specific person. But
Yeah.
I also think it's important to be able to not just stay in a bubble and to have, a community of multiple perspectives.
Let me give you a different choice perspective. I was working for AMD, and across the street there's a Vietnamese restaurant. I ordered a noodle soup. I don't like it. So it takes me about 3 months to convince the boss to create the dish that I love. I eat the same dish for like a year and a half. Same dish every day. I come and she prepared that dish for me. It's just perfect for me. And then the daughter on the summer break, she been serving me the same dish for a week. And then she looked at her mom and walked towards me and say, well, excuse me, sir, do you know that we have other things on the menu?
But isn't that human nature? You find something you like and you stick with it.
Yeah, I say, oh, really? I didn't know that. How about give me this dish and I'll try something else tomorrow, I promise. Again, it's a story of choice. I love to create choices out of what I have because a lot of times, just a small modification, you can make it like Barry's doing. Like all you do is tweak a little bit thing, you can fix it. You don't need a new piece of equipment. You don't need a new piece of whatever it is. You can make things work. Work with what you have is what my point is. So choice can be a deception. When you have choice, like okay, a lot of people, this is what I found. So I have trouble with my wife. Let me find a new wife. I said, you're going to bring your problem with you because the problem is like a shadow. They will follow you wherever you go.
Right. The problem's not the wife, the problem's you.
Exactly right. So with there are people my friends are married for the 7th time. They say, well, this is my final. I say, Jim, I promise you there'll be the 8th.
Well, going back to what oh, go ahead, Barry.
So I'm trying to write and my pen's not working. Well, it's not that I have it at too shallow of an angle. Doesn't matter if I get a new pen, it still ain't going to work because this is the problem, not the. And so the same with, you're using it wrong.
Yeah, I think the problem's not that we're dumbing down society. I think the problem is that we don't incentivize people to share and teach what they know in a way that provides mentorship and apprenticeship.
Or they don't diagnose that there's nothing wrong with your pen. You're holding it at the wrong angle. Diagnosing the thing that's causing the dysfunction is really hard to do.
Yeah, especially systemically on large scale.
Absolutely. There's a small number of angles where it works and an infinite number of angles where it doesn't work. And finding out, that you're in one of those dimensions where you're out of range. I mean, most of the time something's out of range.
Yeah, and I think just like an observation I've made is in certain situation, I find packets of dysfunctional people.
Yeah.
And when I step into that community, I see the dysfunction clear as a bell. But when they see me step in, they say it was working perfectly until you came along.
It's called a cult. A cult is a packet of dysfunctional people.
Yeah.
And
well,
find everybody else is wrong, but in fact, their cult is not working except within their little homogeneous enclave.
Well, the cult of narcissism is quite the cancer that's taking over a lot of, like Dick VJ was talking about, a lot of societies are infected with this fungus. And that fungus feels right because everywhere they look, that fungus is all over everybody. So it feels normal, but they haven't eradicated the fungus, if you will.
Normal isn't necessarily functional. It's just common. And dysfunctional is common. Dysfunctionality is common. It's normal.
But you know what I found? Dysfunctionality actually creates a lot of money. Meaning if you have a dysfunctional organization,
right,
you can borrow from a venture capitalist or the government to subsidize the dysfunction. Now you have more people that need jobs. So it just continues to grow. And that creates.
An example is life coaches. There is a mushrooming of life coaches who are teaching you how to survive a dysfunctional society. And the more people who are peddling the snake oil of how to not go crazy in a dysfunctional society are preventing people from becoming functional.
Yeah.
But it's very functional to become a life coach.
Sorry?
It's very functional to be the person that solves the problem that doesn't need to exist in the first place. That's my point.
Let me show you how to mop the floor better. Never mind the fact that you've got leaky pipes all over the place. I'm going to show you how to be a really good floor mopper.
Yeah. Let me show you 7 different mops to use. Let's go on Amazon and buy them.
Exactly.
Wait, but that creates a need for a bigger closet.
Right.
Yada, yada, so on and so forth.
I mean, this is a project that they gave me at Bell Labs. The person who was mopping the floor came and said, can you design me a better mop? And I said, I could, but I could design a system that there's no leak to mop up. Don't do that, then I'm out of a job.
Yep.
I wanted a better mop, not no leaks.
And that's my favorite story from my friend Karen, whose family lives in Germany. Her washing machine broke. And she went to the hardware store to get the little pan that goes under the washing machine to collect the water. And there was no such pan that exists because in Germany, they don't put a pan under there. They just fix it.
Don't have a leak, right? Exactly.
And that mentality is not an American or a capitalistic mentality because it doesn't provide innovation. The
Right.
more problems, the more money is what I think the formula is.
You
So
don't
why
So
solve
let's
it?
say right. I would say
mean-
one thing to give you the thoughts for the whole week before I go. It's 10 o'clock already, so I need to get going. So the thought is that I'm so grateful and happy that we don't have a compelling reason that the collaborology is a necessity. So imagine that alien coming to attack us, give us 3 more months to live unless we get the collaborology to work.
Never happened.
So I'm grateful and happy that we don't have that compelling reason to have everybody must collaborate.
That was the Manhattan Project.
That's right. All right, love you guys. I got going. It's my time to
Have a
go.
great day,
Thank you.
Sam.
Enjoy. Okay,
Thanks.
bye-bye.
Have a great day, Sam. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
And before we go, I wanted to ask Sam Han, are you happy with where Collaborology is going? And what do you need for help? I just want to ask you, I know you've got to go out of town for a while and
I'm actually quite happy with an insight you might have heard me briefly describe yesterday. And it's the way I characterize it is it's for me the most compelling personal insight about how I'm going to spend the rest of my life since 2009. And in 2009 is when I sort of described this vision, which I haven't been able to work on, called Global Sim. But interestingly, outfits like GitHub and Kaggle have come a long ways towards that. But just yesterday in the shower, I was able to pull together Collaborology, Global Sim, Kaggle, GitHub, a number of other things. And so I'm about ready to diagram it up and document it, but not ready to discuss it yet. But I'm pretty excited about where it's going. So thank you for asking.
I love it. That sounds wonderful. Yeah, I'm in the same kind of boat. I have so many new tools that have come into my zone, but in order to play with them, I need more people to do that. But I want to do it with intentionality, not just because we're playing with it, but to actually help others. So I'm looking for, and the number one thing that I'm looking to do right now is to build affordable housing for my family because we only have so much money. And then after I do that, I can use that understanding and that experience to help others. Which is why I showed you guys my little miter thing. I'm actually pretty stoked on this because it takes away these little metal brackets. And if you don't have those metal brackets, less work for, so on and so forth. So I'm learning the Buckminster Fuller method of building with the least weight. And it's challenging. Thank you.
All right. Ciao.
Cheers, Diggy.